Because I was 14 years old and I was left literally at boarding school in Switzerland. Nobody came to pick me up. I really did not know what I was going to do. And a friend of mine, a classmate, had me join her and her family while I tried desperately to get a hold of my parents.
You were sort of an unconventional mom.
Yeah.
And an unconventional wife too, I guess, yeah?
Yes.
Shirley MacLaine, a name that recalls a Hollywood both dazzling and turbulent. Born during the Great Depression, she first stepped onto the stage on fragile ankles, only to become one of the most enduring actresses of the 20th century. Across more than 7 decades, from The Apartment to Terms of Endearment, MacLaine left her mark with iconic performances and built a rare symbol of independence in a film industry long dominated by men. But Shirley MacLaine was never just a movie star. She was a woman unafraid to live differently. An open marriage that lasted nearly 3 decades, relationships full of contradictions, a complicated bond with her daughter often under public scrutiny, and a spiritual journey marked by belief in past lives, UFOs, and the afterlife. To some, she was a pioneer. To others, eccentric. Yet no one has ever denied her audacity and her magnetic presence. At 90, Shirley MacLaine still hasn't stopped, releasing new books, appearing in independent films, and continuing to affirm a philosophy of life rooted in freedom and without regret. Behind the bright lights of Hollywood, she stands as proof that some artists exist not only to perform, but to question, to provoke, and to search for deeper meaning in life. Early life. Shirley MacLaine, born Shirley MacLaine Beatty on April 24, 1934, in Richmond, Virginia, came from an educated but unstable middle-class family. Her father, Ira Owens Beatty, was a psychology professor who also worked in various roles such as school administrator and real estate agent. He was strict, emotionally reserved, and often changed jobs, which forced the family to move constantly, from Richmond to Norfolk, then Arlington, Waverly, and finally back to Arlington. Her mother, Kathleen Corinne MacLaine, a Canadian-born drama teacher, had a romantic spirit and a passion for the arts. She was the one who instilled in Shirley a love for the stage and named her after the child star, Shirley Temple. Inside that household, discipline and creativity were always at odds. Her cold, heavy-drinking father stood in stark contrast to her dreamy, often emotionally distant mother. Shirley would later say she carried the psychology of an orphaned child, always having to fend for herself in her own world. In 1937, the family welcomed another child, her brother Warren Beatty, who would go on to become one of Hollywood's great actors and directors. The bond between Shirley and Warren was both close and competitive, and in later years, disagreements over family matters even led to a period of estrangement. From an early age, Shirley faced a physical challenge: weak ankles prone to frequent sprains that caused her to fall often. To help, her mother enrolled her in ballet at the Washington School of Ballet when she was just 3 years old. What began as therapy soon became a passion. Shirley never missed a lesson, trained rigorously, and quickly showed extraordinary endurance and determination. By age 16, she was strong enough to perform on stage with the Washington School of Ballet. During one performance of Cinderella while playing the fairy godmother, she broke her ankle just before going on stage. Yet she bandaged it tightly and finished the show. That grit would define her career for decades to come. However, her tall frame and foot structure prevented her from pursuing a professional career in ballet. Letting go of that first dream, Shirley turned to the stage. At Washington Lee High School in Arlington, She stood out both in theater productions and as a cheerleader, thanks to her confidence and stage presence. She often traveled alone by bus and streetcar to classes and rehearsals, long rides that gave her time to reflect and nurtured a deep sense of independence and a desire to see the world. A childhood of upheaval, with constant relocations, a stern father, an emotionally absent mother, rivalry with her younger brother, and the struggle of weak ankles, shaped Shirley into a fiercely self-reliant spirit. For her, art was not just joy, but also refuge, a source of stability amid the turbulence of family life and the uncertainties of wartime America. From those early years, Shirley MacLaine forged a resilient character, unwilling to bow to convention and ready to step beyond boundaries in pursuit of her own path. Early career. Even as a student at Washington Lee High School, Shirley MacLaine knew she would not stop at school plays. There, she was both a theater star and a standout cheerleader, remembered by classmates and teachers for her confidence and natural gift for performance. That environment gave her not only the courage to face large crowds, but also a bigger dream: Broadway, a place only the bold dared to pursue. At just 18, Shirley left Arlington and moved to New York on her own, carrying with her a vague but burning conviction that the stage was her destiny. At first, she landed only small roles, including ensemble parts in Oklahoma, and a spot in the chorus line of Me and Juliet, a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. But Shirley was never the type to wait for luck. She observed, learned, and prepared quietly. Her breakthrough came when she was cast as the understudy for Carol Haney in The Pajama Game, 1954. Determined not to miss her chance, Shirley even cut her hair short to resemble Haney, ready at any moment to step in. The moment arrived sooner than expected. When Haney injured her ankle before a performance, Shirley took the stage. With confidence, grit, and an unusual charm, she won over the audience instantly. That same night, comedian Jerry Lewis happened to be in the audience. He was so impressed that he phoned legendary producer Hal B. Wallace. Soon after, Wallace came to see Shirley perform in person and immediately signed her to a 5-year contract with Paramount Pictures. It was a fateful turning point that catapulted the unknown chorus girl from Broadway straight into the glittering world of Hollywood. From then on, she changed her professional name, from Shirley MacLaine Beatty to Shirley MacLaine, adopting her mother's maiden name to make it simpler, more distinctive, and easier to remember. The new name quickly became a brand in itself. Within just weeks, Shirley had gone from chorus line to Hollywood stardom, a rise so swift it seemed almost like a fairy tale. Her film debut came with Alfred Hitchcock's The Trouble with Harry, 1955. The movie was not a major box office hit, but audiences and critics were struck by Shirley's fresh presence, witty, intelligent, at once alluring and a little tomboyish. The performance earned her a Golden Globe for New Star of the Year, marking the beginning of a long and storied film career. In 1956, she appeared in the lavish, star-studded Around the World in 80 Days. 2 years later came her golden opportunity with Some Came Running, 1958, where she starred opposite Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. The role of Jenny had originally been intended for Marilyn Monroe, but when Monroe turned it down, Shirley stepped in. Her tragic, deeply human portrayal earned her a first Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, propelling her from the understudy to an A-list star. By the late 1950s, Shirley had become a familiar face in Hollywood. Her versatility allowed her to move effortlessly between comedy and tragedy, never allowing herself to be typecast, a fate that trapped many actresses of her era. Shirley MacLaine's early career was not just the story of a lucky break, but also a testament to her tireless preparation, determination, and boldness to break free of limits. From Broadway stages to major film sets, she proved that resilience and audacity could turn a sprained ankle into the very leap that changed a life forever. Career success. After her promising start with Alfred Hitchcock's The Trouble with Harry, 1955, and her first Oscar nomination for Some Came Running, 1958, Shirley MacLaine quickly proved she was more than just another pretty face in Hollywood. She was a true talent. The 1960s marked a period of triumph, establishing her as one of the most influential actresses on the screen. Her role as Fran Kubelik in The Apartment, 1960, the vulnerable secretary entangled in an affair with her boss, brought her a second Oscar nomination. Under Billy Wilder's direction and alongside Jack Lemmon, Shirley created a character at once fragile and resilient, unforgettable to audiences. Charlize Theron once remarked that Shirley made a black and white film feel as if it were in color, a rare compliment to her ability to breathe life into a role. But Shirley never chose the safe path. In 1961, she shook Hollywood with The Children's Hour, playing Martha Doby, a woman harboring romantic feelings for her friend, Audrey Hepburn. At a time when homosexuality was taboo and even deemed a pathology under the Hays Code, Shirley took a tremendous risk. Martha's tragic fate, ending in suicide under social condemnation, was not merely a performance, but a groundbreaking act of defiance. Though audiences were not yet ready, Shirley opened the door for films willing to confront hidden realities. 2 years later, she drew acclaim again with Irma la Douce, 1963, portraying a Parisian prostitute both naive and endearing. To prepare, Shirley and Jack Lemmon met real sex workers in Paris, observing their lives in detail. That dedication allowed her to craft a performance at once comedic and humane, earning her a Golden Globe and a third Oscar nomination. While many actresses of her era were typecast, Shirley proved she could seamlessly shift between comedy, romance, and tragedy. By the late 1960s, she demonstrated power behind the scenes with Sweet Charity, 1969. Not only did she star in the film, she also convinced Universal to entrust direction to Bob Fosse, a brilliant choreographer with no film experience. Despite the risks, she championed him. Although the film flopped at the box office, Shirley's performance of If My Friends Could See Me Now became iconic. More importantly, Sweet Charity revealed her clout. Few actresses had the influence to dictate directorial choices. The 1970s saw Shirley slow down, not as decline, but as reinvention. She left Hollywood to travel the world, from India and Bhutan to Africa, seeking spiritual and political insights. When she returned in The Turning Point, 1977, she delivered a profound performance as a ballet dancer who abandoned her career to become a mother. The film garnered 11 Oscar nominations, including another Best Actress nod for Shirley. Though she did not win, the role showed her matured depth, enriched by her life experiences. 2 years later, she earned further praise in Being There, 1979, alongside Peter Sellers. As Eve Rand, a powerful yet lonely widow, Shirley brought a delicate balance of humor and melancholy, helping elevate the satire into a classic. The 1980s marked her true peak. Terms of Endearment, 1983, cemented her legend. As Aurora Greenway, a strong-willed, difficult yet loving mother, Shirley made audiences laugh and cry in equal measure. The film's set was notoriously tense, Shirley and Deborah Winger clashed so bitterly they refused to share a trailer and often quarreled. Director James L. Brooks harnessed that real-life friction to fuel the on-screen intensity. When Shirley won the 1984 Oscar for Best Actress, she strode onto the stage and declared, "I deserve this," a proud, justified proclamation after 3 decades of surviving Hollywood's harshness. In the following years, she continued to shine. In Steel Magnolias, 1989, Shirley embodied Ouiser, a sharp-tongued, cantankerous woman hiding a soft heart, earning both ire and affection from audiences. In Postcards from the Edge, 1990, opposite Meryl Streep, she portrayed a domineering, artistic mother, crafting a battle of performances that mirrored real-life mother-daughter conflicts. Then in Guarding Tess, 1994, she transformed a former First Lady into a complex figure, difficult yet deeply human, once again stealing the spotlight. By the 2000s, Shirley had not slowed down. In 2005 alone, she appeared in Her Shoes, rumor has it, and Bewitched. Even in her 70s, she maintained her sharp wit and charisma, matching younger stars like Cameron Diaz, Jennifer Aniston, and Nicole Kidman. Later, Bernie, 2011, showcased a tougher, darker Shirley opposite Jack Black, proving she never settled into predictability. And in 2012, she delighted global audiences in Downton Abbey as Martha Levinson, the brash, outspoken American foil to Maggie Smith's Violet, turning every exchange into a scene-stealing duel. Her honors reflect this longevity. Golden Globes for Irma La Douce and Terms of Endearment, the 1984 Best Actress Oscar, the Cecil B. DeMille Award in 1998, the AFI Life Achievement Award in 2012, and the Kennedy Center Honor in 2013. This collection of accolades belongs only to artists of lasting influence. More importantly, Shirley's career was not just a string of roles, but a declaration of power. She sued Paramount for breach of contract and won, setting a legal precedent. She once slapped producer Hal Wallace for harassment, punched a journalist for publishing lies, and wielded enough authority to choose directors, protecting Bob Fosse in Sweet Charity and forcing studios to respect female performers. In a Hollywood long ruled by men, Shirley MacLaine was not merely an actress. She was a trailblazer who broke rules and spoke out when others stayed silent. Now at 90, while many of her peers have long retired, Shirley continues to write books, release projects like The Wall of Life, appear in films such as People Not Places, and command respect across the arts. Looking back, her career stands as proof of an indomitable spirit. From an understudy on Broadway to an Oscar-winning star, from daring rule breaker to scene stealer in later years, Shirley MacLaine has transformed her entire artistic journey into a manifesto of resilience, individuality, and the quiet power of a woman in a man's world. Personal life. As Hollywood's lights shone ever brighter, Shirley MacLaine cemented her position as one of the most powerful actresses of the 1960s and 1970s. Yet behind the packed filming schedules, iconic performances, and prestigious awards, she remained a woman searching for stability in her private life. That was where Steve Parker appeared. A love, a confidant, and ultimately, a source of deep fractures in Shirley's heart. They met in New York in 1952, in a crowded bar full of artists. Steve Parker, a businessman and show organizer with charm and quick wit, proposed to her just hours after they first spoke. Impulsive as it was, it suited the 18 to 19-year-old Shirley, fresh from Arlington and chasing Broadway dreams. She smiled and said yes, then quickly returned to the stage with youthful ambition. 2 years later, in 1954, they married, just as Shirley was stepping through the doorway from Broadway to Hollywood with her Paramount contract. 2 years later, their only child, Stephanie Sachi Parker, was born. Yet soon after, Steve confessed that if he stayed in Los Angeles, he would forever be labeled Mr. MacLaine. He chose instead to move to Japan, building a career in the entertainment and events world, while Shirley stayed in Hollywood. That decision laid the foundation for a very different kind of marriage, 2 continents apart, and open from the start. Both agreed not to be bound by jealousy, and Shirley openly admitted that they each had relationships outside the marriage. She often said it was precisely this non-ownership that allowed their marriage to last 28 years. But open didn't mean there was no cost. When Sachi was just a few years old, after a drunken babysitter incident and rumors of kidnapping, Shirley agreed to let her daughter live primarily with her father in Japan. Mother and daughter would only meet during summer vacations, Christmas, or when Shirley's filming schedule took her to Asia. For Shirley, it was compromise. To keep her soaring career while trusting Sachi would have a safer environment with her father. For Sachi, it was a wound. In her memoir, Lucky Me, 2013, she recalled feelings of abandonment, weeks left behind at a Swiss boarding school when no one came to pick her up, and harsh punishments upon returning to the U.S. Shirley denied or downplayed much of this, yet she admitted one truth. She never intended to give up her career to be a full-time mother. If I quit, the frustration would have been worse for everyone. For the couple, distance made their encounters fleeting, yearly rendezvous. Shirley still described Steve as her friend, advisor, and soulmate, the man who gave her space to make 25 films in 15 years. Steve, meanwhile, thrived in Tokyo as a polished event organizer. Yet this two-worlds model also bred underlying conflicts: money, secrecy, and affairs. Shirley acknowledged her relationships with Robert Mitchum, Yves Montand, Danny Kaye, and politician Andrew Peacock as part of the marital arrangement. She viewed them as experiences and growth, not betrayal. But she later admitted that large sums she sent to Japan for Steve's projects had ended up in the accounts of his lovers. To Shirley, that was a costly lesson in trust. As Sachi grew older, the mother-daughter relationship only became more tangled. She recalled Shirley once telling her that Steve wasn't her biological father, but that her real father was a space astronaut named Paul on a secret mission, with Steve merely a government-made double. Shirley dismissed this as fabrication or distortion, but it revealed the widening emotional chasm, two people living in two versions of reality. In her 20s, whenever Sachi asked for financial help, she claimed Shirley either charged interest or cut off support to force independence. Shirley explained it as a philosophy of parenting, self-reliance, insisting, "I was always at the other end of the phone." Marital cracks deepened in the early 1980s. After nearly 3 decades of an open union, what broke them wasn't infidelity, but secrecy. Shirley discovered Steve had fathered a child with a geisha in Japan and kept it hidden. For her, who believed honesty was the foundation of openness, it was deceit, not sex, that crossed the line. In 1982, she filed for divorce. Legal battles over finances followed, and years later, Shirley still emphasized what she could never forgive was not telling the truth. Paradoxically, even after their split, Shirley spoke of Steve with warmth. She called him the great love of my life and publicly thanked him for giving her the freedom to become Shirley MacLaine on screen. She defended their open marriage model in interviews. Jealousy was wasted energy, she argued, and ownership was the real cause of failure. If we had lived traditionally, the marriage would have ended much sooner, she often said. Yet the deepest scars lay not in her marriage, but in her relationship with her daughter, Sachi Parker. Born into Hollywood's glow in 1956, Sachi was photographed on the cover of Life magazine with her mother, draped in pearl necklaces worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But behind that glamorous photo, the memories she kept were of absence. From her earliest years, Sachi was sent to live in Japan with her father. Mother and daughter saw each other only in seasonal fragments, weeks in summer, days at Christmas, or fleeting visits during film shoots in Asia. Those moments passed too quickly, leaving Sachi with a sense of impermanence, as if love was always temporary. In Lucky Me, she called it the feeling of always being on the outside. The hurt deepened as Shirley, widely seen as an icon of honesty and freedom, sometimes appeared in harsh forms. Sachi recounted being locked in a room for 3 days without food as punishment for lying. She remembered the pain of her high school graduation when Shirley was absent, but later gifted her a glittering diamond necklace, then promptly cut off all financial support with the curt message, "You're on your own." To Sachi, the necklace became a symbol of Hollywood itself, dazzling but cold, radiant, yet unable to feed a meal. Perhaps most devastating was at 27, when Sachi became pregnant and sought her mother's help. She claimed Shirley refused, leaving her cornered to the point of terminating the pregnancy. Shirley denied this, dismissing it as shock tactics. But for Sachi, it remained an unhealed wound. Between the two conflicting accounts, the truth blurred. But what was undeniable was the chasm between them, no longer just physical distance, but an emotional abyss. Beyond these conflicts, Sachi also carried confusion about her identity. She recalled her mother insisting Steve was not her biological father and that her real father was an astronaut named Paul on a classified mission, while Steve was only a government clone. Shirley dismissed this as distortion, but for Sachi, it captured a childhood of half-truths and mysteries that widened the sense of estrangement. In adulthood, Sachi tried to mend the bond, returning to the U.S., attempting acting, hoping to connect. But instead of maternal embrace, she found a mother who explained everything through the lens of independence. Self-reliance is the greatest gift. Sachi worked as a flight attendant waitress, anything to get by, carrying the diamond necklace as a reminder of a half-given love. Shirley, in turn, repeatedly affirmed that she loved her daughter, that I was always on the other end of the phone, if she needed me. In her eyes, absence wasn't abandonment, but philosophy, not binding so her daughter could grow strong. But for Sachi, such explanations never filled the silence of being left behind in a Swiss dormitory when holidays had already begun, or the years of struggling alone across Australia, Japan, and America. The marriage of Shirley and Steve was like a social experiment tested under extreme conditions. A rising movie star, grueling schedules, 2 continents apart, public scrutiny, and a marriage challenged by personal freedom. They loved, respected, gave each other space, and ultimately lost one another over the one freedom that could not coexist: dishonesty. Shirley held to her philosophy: freedom first, possession second. Steve pursued his own career abroad. Their daughter grew up suspended between those two poles, still searching for answers into adulthood. And when the story of their union finally closed, Shirley spoke of Steve in tender tones. The man across the ocean who had left the door open for her to run the distance and become herself. Love affairs outside marriage. If the fractures with her daughter Sachi left a void difficult to mend, Shirley MacLaine's romantic life painted a contrasting picture: vibrant, full of experiences, and always beyond the boundaries of convention. She never believed that love had to mean possession or jealousy. For Shirley, each relationship was an adventure, sometimes intense, sometimes light, but always leaving its mark on her soul, much like the roles she played on screen. Perhaps the deepest of her extramarital loves was with Robert Mitchum. He embodied the old-school Hollywood masculinity: aloof, rugged, sometimes abrasive to the point of being unapproachable. Yet it was precisely this unpredictability that drew Shirley in. She once described Mitchum as a man with a steel shell but with an unpredictable tenderness inside. Over their 3 years together, they shared long trips, silent nights over drinks, punctuated by sudden bursts of passion. Mitchum never gave her his whole heart, but he never left entirely either, always keeping just enough distance to leave Shirley both hurt and enthralled. It was a love without destination, but unforgettable for the challenge and the glimpse into masculine shadows that Hollywood rarely revealed. Her relationship with Danny Kaye, on the other hand, carried a lighter tone. Kaye, a comedian with charm, sophistication, and the ability to make an entire room laugh, brought Shirley a brief respite from the pressures of her world. Their time together was full of humor and warmth, without the anguish. Though short-lived, that affair reminded her that love could be as simple as joy shared at the right moment. Yves Montand, the French actor and singer, brought her yet another kind of experience: romantic, artistic, worldly. With Montand came a taste of Paris, the intoxication of European artistry, where love was not eternal commitment, but an endless conversation about life, art, and philosophy. Though their romance didn't last, Montand left Shirley with a vivid impression of cross-cultural allure. Love could exist only in a fleeting moment, yet still define an entire period of one's life. Most distinct was her relationship with Andrew Peacock, Australia's foreign minister. This chapter intertwined with politics and diplomacy. They not only shared private affection, but also appeared together at international events, attended diplomatic receptions, and traveled across nations. Peacock, elegant, aristocratic in bearing, was both confidant and intellectual companion. For Shirley, this was more than a romance. It was an experience that blended art, politics, and the spirit of adventure she always craved. Shirley often said she never regretted a single man who passed through her life. For her, each relationship was a real role in the theater of her existence. Mitchum left behind bitterness, but passion. Kaye brought gentle laughter, Montand embodied borderless romance, and Peacock represented a broader vision where love fused with ideals. None of these loves became chains, nor were they ever denied. All remained as lessons, experiences, and memories Shirley held with gratitude. For Shirley MacLaine, love was never a destination, but a journey, where she could live, experiment, feel, and then move on. It was this freedom that made her love life both controversial, and fascinating, like an extension of her artistic career, daring, colorful, but never willing to bow to traditional limits. Battles and behind-the-scenes scandals. If the spotlight made Shirley MacLaine a star, the shadows behind the scenes revealed her as a fighter who never backed down. Over more than half a century in the business, MacLaine didn't just prove herself with talent on screen, she constantly plunged into noisy battles, from film sets to courtrooms to the press, where she showed her defiance, toughness, and refusal to be bullied. One of her most infamous clashes came with Deborah Winger during the filming of Terms of Endearment, 1983. It was a collision of generations. MacLaine, a seasoned veteran with dozens of films, and Winger, a young actress at the height of her career. Disputes erupted over everything from whose name came first on the poster. Paramount eventually split the difference, with MacLaine billed first in the US and Winger overseas, to scheduling, attitudes, and even outrageous pranks. Winger once stormed out of rehearsal only to return and lift her skirt to pass gas in Shirley's face, and even licked her leg in front of a shocked Jack Nicholson. The set became a battlefield, to the point where even the promotional campaign and trailer release schedules had to be separated to avoid clashes. But on Oscar night in 1984, it was MacLaine who walked away with the statue, leaving Winger to swallow the bitterness. That victory was the final knockout punch in a Hollywood boxing match that had lasted all year. It wasn't the only time Shirley found herself in confrontation. On the set of A Change of Seasons, 1980, she and Anthony Hopkins quickly discovered they were incompatible. Hopkins called her the most obnoxious actress he had ever worked with, to which Shirley shot back, "I don't like you either." The result, the production had to schedule filming and publicity separately so the two stars would cross paths as little as possible. With Anthony Perkins on The Matchmaker, 1958, the tension was subtler but persistent. Shirley later said she could never read Perkins, unsure where the acting ended and the real man began. The mismatch of energy made every scene awkward. Adding to the strain, Perkins was paid 3 times her salary despite doing comparable work. Only later, when Shirley learned he had been forced by the studio to end his same-sex relationship and undergo conversion therapy, did she begin to understand the shadows that haunted the set. Tensions also flared when she worked with Clint Eastwood on 2 Mules for Sister Sarah, 1970. 2 strong personalities, a seasoned actress and a rising Western star, clashed almost daily. Director Don Siegel fanned the flames by joking that Shirley had more balls than any man on set. Though the film was a commercial success, Eastwood vowed never again to take a role underneath Shirley. Even with directors, Shirley never hesitated to fight. During The Turning Point, 1977, she constantly debated with Herbert Ross over the portrayal of the lead character, a ballerina who abandons her career for family. Shirley wanted to dig into the psychology. Ross leaned toward the script's structure. Their arguments were heated, but the result was a film imbued with raw authenticity, even if it went home empty-handed after 11 Oscar nominations. Her battles also extended beyond the set. She nearly became Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, but the project collapsed when word spread that Bonnie and Clyde would be played by siblings, Shirley and Warren Beatty. The moral optics made the project untenable. Even Hal B. Wallace, the producer who once helped launch her career, wasn't spared. After she accused him of harassment and unfair contracts, Shirley refused to stay silent. She took him to court, refused to compromise, and won, establishing herself as one of the rare actresses to openly challenge the old studio system. The pinnacle came with the landmark case, Shirley MacLaine vs. 20th Century Fox, 1966, when the studio canceled her contract at the last minute. Shirley pursued the case all the way to the California Supreme Court and won. The ruling became a classic precedent in labor contract law, still studied in law schools today. Perhaps the most symbolic moment of her refusal to be bullied came in the 1950s, when journalist Mike Connolly of The Hollywood Reporter published a scathing article about her. Shirley marched straight into his office and punched him in the mouth. The press went wild. Public opinion split. But the image of Shirley MacLaine as Hollywood's warrior woman was etched permanently. From the outside, these battles and scandals looked like controversies. But on a deeper level, they reflected Shirley's life philosophy. Never bow, never accept being the silent beauty trampled by the system. That stubbornness, sometimes costly, sometimes electrifying, was one of the reasons why the name Shirley MacLaine transcended mere stardom to become a symbol of resilience in an industry built on conflict and spectacle, spiritual journey and self-discovery. If her battles on film sets made Shirley MacLaine famous as a fearless star, then outside Hollywood's spotlight, she embarked on another journey, just as loud and controversial, a quest for spirituality and politics. For Shirley, challenging the power of studios or clashing with colleagues was only part of the picture. The deeper part was seeking answers to questions like, who am I? Where have I lived before? And can human beings truly change this world? From the early 1970s, she transformed those impulses into books. More than 14 works followed, from Don't Fall Off the Mountain, 1970, to Out on a Limb, 1983, and later Saging While Aging, 2007. In them, Shirley didn't just recount her life as an actress, but openly shared her belief in reincarnation, past lives, Atlantis, star people, Ramtha, and even UFO encounters at her New Mexico ranch. Out on a Limb was explosive. A global bestseller later adapted into a 1987 miniseries, with nearly 30 million viewers watching Shirley communicate with spirits and describe her metaphysical journeys. People mocked her, the media ridiculed her, yet she insisted, "It's all true for me." Her adventures weren't confined to the page. Shirley once walked 500 miles along the Camino de Santiago, confronting fear, loneliness, and visions of herself. For her, it was a spiritual trial by fire, like a role with no director, only raw truth. Alongside her spiritual pilgrimages, Shirley also stepped boldly into politics with the same fearless attitude. In 1972, at the height of her career, she shocked Hollywood by pausing acting to dedicate herself to the presidential campaign of George McGovern, the Democratic candidate opposing Richard Nixon. To many, it was madness, an A-list star choosing not red carpets, but crowded halls filled with students, workers, and young voters. But Shirley saw it as duty. She stood on university stages urging young people to vote. She led fundraising rallies, using her star power to draw media attention to McGovern. More than just appearances, she wrote McGovern, the man and his beliefs. A political manifesto in her own voice, emphasizing ideals of ending the Vietnam War, protecting the environment, and pursuing social reform. Beyond politics, Shirley was a passionate advocate for women's rights and gender equality. She wielded her influence to demand fair treatment for women, especially in entertainment, where inequality was systemic. On political platforms, she condemned conservative forces and called for justice for women and workers. Behind Hollywood's doors, she demanded equal pay for actresses and urged studios to appoint women to leadership roles, positions many male colleagues dismissed as outrageous or overstepping. But Shirley understood her fame was a weapon, and she was willing to use it to clear a path for those who came after her. Although McGovern lost the election badly, Shirley never regretted her choice. For her, politics, like spirituality, was another way to search for truth and assert identity. And if Hollywood saw her as a rebel, she saw herself as ahead of her time, unafraid to say aloud what others only dared to think. Through her contributions in art, politics, and spirituality, Shirley MacLaine affirmed herself not only as a gifted actress, but as a thinker with conviction and passion for the values she pursued. Her legacy rests not only in her films, but also in the ideas, spiritual journeys, and relentless advocacy for a better world. Relationship with Warren Beatty. If Shirley MacLaine's spiritual journeys and political activism revealed her as someone unafraid to go against the crowd, then in her family life that same rebelliousness shaped a bond both close and tense with her only brother, Warren Beatty. Born into the same artistic household, both siblings entered the film industry, but Shirley's early dazzling success unintentionally pushed Warren to find a way out of her shadow. When he began his career, he changed the family name from Beatty to Beatty, adding an extra T to assert his own identity and avoid being labeled forever as Shirley MacLaine's brother. Yet a single letter could not erase their blood connection. Over the years, there were simmering frictions between them, mostly rooted in their clashing personalities and philosophies. Shirley was known for her bluntness, risk-taking, and confrontational spirit, while Warren was more reserved, carefully curated his public image, and spoke with greater caution. At times, even a journalist's slip, introducing him as Shirley MacLaine's younger brother, was enough to provoke Warren's irritation and leave Shirley feeling hurt. Still, beyond every quarrel, family ties endured. Shirley repeatedly defended Warren in times of turmoil, most notably during the 2017 Oscars when her brother accidentally read the wrong winner for Best Picture. As the world laughed and mocked, Shirley spoke up to reassure the public, insisting it was simply a professional mishap and that Warren did not deserve the ridicule. For her, no matter their differences, he remained the closest person in her life, the one I've known and loved the longest. They also stand as one of Hollywood's rare brother-sister pairs to both win Oscars. Shirley for Terms of Endearment, 1983, Warren for Reds, 1981, along with his many nominations as director, producer, and actor. This made them a unique cinematic dynasty, a symbol of parallel talent and strong personalities, even if not always in harmony. The bond between Shirley and Warren, therefore, has always been taut but unbreakable. A relationship both opposing and inseparable, reflecting the complexities of family under Hollywood's dazzling lights. Legacy and influence. Looking back on her life, Shirley MacLaine's legacy cannot be measured by the number of roles she played or awards she won, but by the boldness with which she lived and made art. On screen, she created characters that became icons. Fran in The Apartment, fragile yet determined. Aurora Greenway in Terms of Endearment, tough, sharp-tongued yet full of complex maternal love. Ouise Boudreau in Steel Magnolias, irritable but warm-hearted. Each role not only left a mark on American cinema, but also helped reshape how women were portrayed. They could be both humorous and tragic, independent yet vulnerable, contradictory but deeply human. The Oscars, Golden Globes, BAFTAs, and International Film Festival honors are only part of the story. More importantly, Shirley MacLaine proved that a woman could take control of her own career. From demanding fair contract terms with Paramount to suing 20th Century Fox and winning a case that became a precedent studied in law schools, to single-handedly bringing sweet charity to the screen despite enormous financial risks. She was not just an artist, but a trailblazer who helped redefine the rules of Hollywood, where women could no longer be confined to pretty faces on film, but recognized as individuals with real power and influence. Beyond cinema, her legacy also lives in her books. More than 14 works, from Don't Fall Off the Mountain to Out on a Limb, not only became bestsellers, but sparked a wave of spiritual curiosity in America during the 1980s. Her ideas, whether about reincarnation, UFOs, or higher consciousness, pushed millions to question existence, the meaning of life, and humanity's place in the universe. In popular culture, the name Shirley MacLaine became synonymous with the courage to cross the boundary between reality and belief. Her influence also reached politics and society. In joining George McGovern's 1972 presidential campaign, Shirley didn't just lend her name, she actively raised funds, gave speeches, and rallied students. She was also one of the rare Hollywood women of her time to speak out forcefully on gender equality, demanding equal pay, as well as opportunities for women to direct and produce. What once seemed outrageous, later became cornerstones of the Me Too movement and the fight for parity in the entertainment industry. Today, in her 90s, Shirley still stands as a living witness of Hollywood. Someone who emerged during the golden age of Hitchcock, Sinatra, and Wilder, yet maintained her place in the eras of Julia Roberts and Downton Abbey. To audiences, she is a star. To colleagues, a trailblazer. And to history, a symbol of the courage to live on one's own terms. Shirley MacLaine's greatest legacy is not an Oscar statuette or a string of box office hits, but a reminder that artists and people have the right to chart their own path, even when that path is strange, lonely, and full of challenges. Current life. At 91, when many of her contemporaries have long stepped away from the public eye, Shirley MacLaine continues to embrace a creative rhythm and a rare spirit of freedom. The year 2024 marked a milestone as she celebrated her 90th birthday. Instead of throwing a loud party, Shirley chose an intimate evening with close friends and announced a new book project, The Wall of Life, Pictures and Stories from This Marvelous Lifetime. Released on October 22, 2024, the book showcases more than 150 treasured photographs spanning her childhood, career, and present life. Each image a fragment of a journey that has been turbulent, yet profoundly meaningful. Alongside her writing, Shirley remains active on screen. She joined the film project People Not Places, playing an elderly widow who befriends a homeless man portrayed by Stephen Dorff. The story is not only about an unlikely friendship, but also proof that, even at 90, Shirley chooses roles that are humane, intimate, and layered. In early 2025, she and Dorff were spotted sharing a casual lunch at a seaside restaurant in Malibu, a simple, everyday moment that showed her ease and warmth in both work and life. In 2024, the press also noted Shirley's rare public appearances around Malibu. Dressed casually, she was seen dining at her favorite spot, Christie's Cafe, laughing and chatting with friends. The image stood in stark contrast to the glamorous red carpet star, Here was a woman savoring the peace of her later years. In a brief interview, Shirley candidly observed that Hollywood's glitter had faded and no longer resembled the world of cinema in which she once thrived. Shirley MacLaine's story doesn't end with the glow of fame, nor is it confined to controversies or mysteries of her private life. What makes her stand apart is the way she chooses to live, always bold, always true to herself, unafraid to go against what is considered normal. At 90, she still carries the curiosity of the young girl who once set foot on Broadway, curious about people, about art, about spirituality, and about life itself. Perhaps that is her greatest message to us. Live authentically, dare to be different, and never stop searching for meaning. And what about you? What impresses you most about Shirley MacLaine, her film stardom, her contradictions, or her restless, searching soul? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to stay with us for more heartfelt life stories.